Good evening. Let's try that again. Good evening. Good evening. Thank you. Welcome. This is one of what will hope to be many more Rockwell Collins Rock Talks. I'm Matthew Nelson. I'm the program coordinator for Make to Innovate. I'd like to, of course, welcome all of you that have come to watch these. I would also like to welcome everyone that's here from Rockwell Collins that will be speaking tonight. And with that, let's give them a big applause for making the trip here. We'll have these talks go to roughly about 7 o'clock or so, and afterwards, don't forget, we will have a meet and greet. There will be some pizza that will be provided. That will be in the atrium, so from here you can just go to the atrium. You'll have a chance to talk to some of these people face to face, and hopefully enjoy some good pizza from Jeff's. With that, I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to Gavin, who is going to talk a little bit more about Rockwell Collins.
Thank you very much for that introduction. Hi, everyone, and welcome again to the RockTalk event. My name is Gavin Lecheski. I'm a systems engineer at Rockwell. Been there for about a year and a half now, and I am really, really excited for tonight. We have an incredible panel of speakers going over a wide variety of topics, and it's going to be hopefully a lot of fun. You get a lot out of it. The RockTalk is the culmination of efforts between Rockwell Collins engineers and recruiters and the Make to Innovate program that's housed here in Howe Hall. Students expressed some interest in hearing more about what it's really like to work at a company like Rockwell, and both the company and Iowa State University listened and created this wonderful event. Before we get started, I would like to thank the Make to Innovate team, ISU, and the ISU Aerospace Department, and getting everything put together. The help has been absolutely outstanding. If we get a round of applause just for the help, thank you very much. Just a quick overview for tonight. We have 5 speakers with us, a question and panel answer afterwards, and then we will be out in the atrium for pizza and a meet and greet. So let's go ahead and get started with our first speaker. Marita Frazee is almost 1 year into being a senior engineering manager over at the Rotary Wing software team, providing flight display solutions for both civil and military customers. She is also the staffing focal for the Airborne Division of Government Systems, encompassing about 1,000 people, including approximately 60 other senior engineering managers. This role allows her to coordinate all sorts of creative staffing solutions with an emphasis on acquiring and retaining talent. She's been with Rockwell Collins over 12 years now in a variety of roles across commercial systems and government systems, including air transport and weapon data link mechanical engineer, weapon data link and ProLine fusion systems engineer, engine indication and crew alert system software lead, and now senior engineering manager. Marita has a bachelor's of science in mechanical engineering from Rose-Hulman Institute of Technology and a master's in business administration from the University of Iowa. Over the past 3 years, she has enjoyed starting a family and starting a business. Marita is a visionary, entrepreneurial spirit who likes to challenge the status quo. Her favorite fortune cookie resides in her office. Every great achievement was once considered impossible. Ladies and gentlemen, Marita Frazee.
Thank you, Gavin. Hello, ISU. All right, so like Gavin said, my name is Marita, and you're here to listen to a couple of us Rockwell folk talk about some tech topics, things you should consider when going into the working world. It's possible that a subset of you are sitting here thinking, what is a Rockwell Collins, right? So, and that's okay. So let me give you some context as to what we do as I experiment with your clicker. Aha. So Rockwell Collins, innovative solutions for aviation, defense, rail, and critical infrastructure keep us and the people we serve safe, connected, and informed. Through industry leadership and an unwavering commitment to work with our customers to understand and achieve their goals, we strive to be the most trusted source of aviation and high-integrity solutions in the world. We are a global company. There we go. 60 locations, 27 countries, We employ 20,000 people worldwide and a 2-hour short drive east. We are headquartered in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. So, in case some of you are not from here, I have provided a map. In Cedar Rapids, Iowa, I am a senior engineering manager, like Gavin said. I'm in charge of a software displays team for rotary wing product line. The other part of my role is staffing focal for the Airborne Division of Government Systems. Now that comprises about 1,000 people, and like Gavin said, about 60 other senior engineering managers, much like myself. I help coordinate creative staffing solutions with an emphasis on attracting and retaining talent. I have so much passion for the staffing focal part of my role. And here's where I'm going to interject for a second and tell you that we're all quite nervous to speak in front of you. So if I do look down, it's because I want to make an important point. But I have so much passion for my role. When I go to work, it doesn't feel like work. I used to wonder if that was really a real thing. You know how you hear about that? Well, I'm here to tell you that it is. And I feel really amazed and blessed to be living this reality for myself. Going into the working world can be really intimidating. But you can't go wrong if you align your job with your passion. But what is passion? What is that? The elusive, vague passion. What I want to do tonight is share with you how I discovered my true passion as a way to provide insight on how you might find yours. So allow me to kick this talk off with a little icebreaker, loosen things up a little bit. Who here is from a cold weather climate in Iowa, Midwest? Okay, that's to be expected. All right. What about warm weather climate folks? How many are in here? A couple of us? All right. So me too. Where I come from, it's a big damn deal when you have a freeze. You literally go outside and wrap your water pipes with towels because they're all above ground. Sounds silly, right? Naturally, when I showed up in the Midwest, I spent my first winter here, and I put my car key in the door of my car and it wouldn't turn. I was pretty baffled. Really, really cold. Felt stranded, a little hopeless in this place full of things I didn't know. The feeling of being an outsider where you don't belong, new to an area, it's a universal feeling. It's very powerful. So my warm weather friends, like you to meet, liquid wrench, or otherwise known as lock de-icer. Apparently there's this magic lubricant that will defrost your locks during those cold winter months. No joke. If you want to talk more about that later, let me know. This is my icebreaker. Har, har, har. Oh, I got applause. Okay. All right. So back to passion. So in order for me to explain my passion to you, you're going to need to know a little bit of history on my upbringing. So before going into college, I was in 5 different schools across 4 different cities in South Central Texas. So I spent a lot of time being the new girl, trying to figure out where I fit in, where I belong. Aha! Maybe some of you have also felt this way, and it's possible that some of you feel this way right now. So not to hover too long on my old crappy pictures of myself. When you are labeled and treated as an outsider, it's easy to identify who else has earned the same title. So naturally, me being a empathetic extrovert, I gravitated towards these other people so that we didn't have to feel alone together. Eventually, I became the voice for the group, and started introducing people to each other that may not have otherwise met, all in the name of just making sure we all felt like we belonged. Now, what I want to stress here is this was not a conscious act. This was just something that I naturally did and do as a part of who I am. So to quote someone famous and entirely reproachable, when you try hard, you die hard. So Kanye wants you to know, if you are not yourself, if you are not authentic, it takes a significant amount of effort to maintain this act. When seeking your passion, it should stem from a core part of who you are. That does not require a significant amount of effort to maintain, or rather, it should be effortless. So fast forward, 2001, I show up at Rose Holman in Terre Haute, Indiana. Hello, Lock de-icer. 2004, co-op at Rockwell Collins. I met students from all over the world, all over the US, people that I still keep tabs on 12 years later. It was a wonderful experience. 2005, got my degree in mechanical engineering, started up at Rockwell. The job was okay. I mean, my plan was stick it out for 3 years, then move to somewhere where no one's ever heard of Lock de-icer. But outside of work, life was pretty incredible. We played volleyball, we traveled, sporting events, tubing, I mean, you name it. So my friends became my family, and Cedar Rapids became my home. 2009, I started working on a rockstar weapon development data link team. Work was extremely exciting, very challenging. Lots of time in the lab. Met a crazy smart guy, ISU grad, double E, third in his class. So 3 years later, I married that man. 2014, we were blessed with a crazy smart, brown-eyed little girl. And in 2015, everything changed for me. Everything. I was invited, one of 3 women selected from our Women's Employee Network to have lunch with our then VP of HR, Miss Martha May, a Southern gal, just like me. She explained that, we know millennials tend to move around a lot in the first 3 years after graduating. Desire to try new things and travel. I thought, I had those desires. I felt like I did those things, but something must have changed. Something's different. Hashtag war for talent. So how could that be? How is it that the new grads coming into Rockwell Collins weren't having the same awesome experience that I had? Were they not meeting people like them that like to do the same sorts of things? Were they starting to feel so alone and so isolated that they chose to leave? I got to tell you, being headquartered in Iowa has done us no favors. You can see Iowa's historic struggle with population growth. But even still, people were coming and leaving. So I came to this realization. Change can be painful. Change can be hard. But nothing is more painful than being in a place and feeling like you don't belong. And this flame lit within me. I needed to reach out to these young people, to you, to share with you what I have learned about how to find your tribe. People like you that like to do the same things that you do. I guarantee you there's something for everyone in eastern Iowa, even if it's hard to find. And I feel moved to help you find it. This is my passion, helping others feel like they belong. It is who I am, It is who I will always be. So what about you? When you look deep inside yourself, what can you identify as a core part of who you are? When you analyze your upbringing, what themes and trends start to emerge? Are you tech junkie? Do you like to keep up to date on the latest and greatest trends in technology? Are you boundary pusher? You like to see past the here and now to figure out the what could be? Do you want to change the world? Make it safer? Eliminate hunger? Help someone reach their full potential? What lights that fire in you? These are all clues in discovering what your true passion is. I started acting on mine. I met again with Martha May and executive leadership to share my perspective on what was going on. I branded myself as somebody that cared about retention by helping newcomers feel welcomed. 6 months later, I was approached about a management opportunity with a twist. The position was inclusive of a role called staffing focal, collaborating on finding creative staffing solutions with an emphasis on attracting and retaining talent. As a staffing focal, I am fiercely committed to helping our new hires get established by coaching other leaders the importance of helping these newcomers feel welcome, whether directly or by meeting other people. Or at least that's my master plan. Culture change takes time. When you feel like you belong, you establish roots. It's good for you, it's good for the company, and for me personally, it's a deeply gratifying sense of accomplishment. Hopefully, I've been able to connect the dots for some of you on discovering your true passion. And maybe I've at least inspired a few more to strive for something other than just going through the motions. Because I'm here to tell you, it can be really intimidating going into the working world. But you cannot go wrong if you align your job with your passion. What lights that fire in you? Thank you.
Thank you, Marita. That's awesome. Our next speaker, Ben Weirkamp, received his Bachelor's of Science from Iowa State University as an aerospace engineer with a minor in business in May 2011. After graduation, Ben started employment at Rockwell Collins, where he recently transitioned to be a technical project manager over government systems radio and communication products. Prior to this transition, Ben was a senior systems engineer working in commercial systems, working with the Bombardier Global Vision flight deck using Rockwell Collins Proline Fusion avionics on the Global 5000 and 6000 aircrafts. Currently, while still working at Rockwell Collins, Ben is working towards getting his master's in business. Along with working through his MBA, Ben enjoys utilizing his pilot license and flying out of the Marion, Iowa airport. While an undergrad engineering at ISU, Ben took the time to satisfy his passion to travel and did a study abroad experience at Massey University in Wellington, New Zealand. Ladies and gentlemen, Ben Weirkamp.
There we go. All right, does that work? Okay. One other part, too, that I didn't have Gavin actually mention is I'm actually one of the co-leads for the Iowa State campus team So many of you, I kind of recognize your faces. I've been on campus quite a few times and come for career fairs and events kind of like these. So I do recognize a few people out there, which is really exciting to see. Where's the clicker at? Okay, but today I'd like to share a concept which I believe has significantly contributed to my personal success at Rockwell Collins. I don't think that this is a new or novel concept by any means, but I do believe it very essential as an attribute to myself and other engineers that I found to be very phenomenal in the industry. So I know as engineers, sometimes we become so engrossed in our projects or our products that we sometimes forget to look up. So today, I want to talk about what I like to call engineering a customer mindset. So during my undergraduate studies, I actually met a man named Matt Eller. He is an entrepreneur, very successful, has a lot of businesses that I can't even keep track of anymore. And he actually used to be an ex-professional football player too, playing center for Kurt Warner, which is kind of exciting. But anyways, Matt left me with some advice my last semester before I went into the industry. He told me that if you always keep your focus on the customer, you'll be successful in anything that you do. So currently I'm working at Rockwell Collins. I'm probably one of the youngest technical project managers currently on the communication products working for the US government. We create commercial solutions for aerial and ground troops. But however, back when I was just a bright-eyed new employee to Rockwell Collins, I started as actually a systems engineer, wanting to tackle every single opportunity that I could to really show myself and get a good first impression. So I kept Matt's bit of advice in my head, and I kept on thinking about how to keep the customer first. So I started as a system engineer working with Bombardier, and that's the Global 5000, 6000 aircraft. Now, this isn't just like a commercial aircraft that you'd fly in. This business jet hits the medium to large premium business sector and includes everything and the kitchen sink, and quite literally, actually. And if you look, that's actually a shower over there in the corner. So this thing's pretty crazy. Although the interior is really amazing in this aircraft, I spent most of my engineering focus right here in this area. So this is the Rockwell Collins ProLine Fusion Avionics Suite. It encompasses and integrates basically with kind of everything you see up here in this picture, and quite a bit more too. It includes the flight controls, navigation systems, and the flight management computer. If you've seen inside today's normal cockpits, if you ever fly commercial, you'll notice quite a bit of difference here, especially with the 15-inch LCD screens that we have. And then we also have a cursor system that works quite a lot like your computer and mouse system. So for me, since Rockwell Collins is what's called a supplier to Bombardier, I realized that Bombardier is my customer, and I wanted to understand them as much as I possibly could. I decided that for me, I wanted to get really close to their flight testing of our avionics equipment. So I started becoming very involved. I started talking with the pilots when they had their briefs before they would actually do their flight testing, and then I'd also follow up with them after their flight tests and join in for their debriefs for the day. And as I did that, I got to hear a lot of things from the pilots. Some amazing, some great compliments. Sometimes they have different opinions, and so I got to hear the complaints as well. When I heard those, I noticed that my first reaction would start to be pretty defensive, to be honest, because when they would talk about a system, I would know the personal engineer who created that system, and I know that person to be very smart, so I thought, of course they have to have it right. The pilots are probably just misusing it. But I had to kind of course correct myself and remember that these pilots are, in fact, our customer. And then also let me add, too, these aren't just the normal pilots. These are the top brass pilots. They're the best of the best for the largest Canadian aircraft manufacturer as well. So then why is there a disconnect between what the pilots expected and what our engineers thought the pilots expected? So with this in my mind, I talked frequently with the pilots and actually listened to what they were saying. And it was actually really a big moment because I could realize that as I started doing that, they really let me in. As the customer, they started inviting and including me on a lot more discussions because they all of a sudden had a new appreciation and we had mutual respect with each other, and I was listening to what their valid opinions were. And it also created a lot of efficiencies in our supplier work environment as well, too. So here's a picture of me, actually, with, on the left side, that's the Chief Bombardier pilot. He was at the time flying this Global 5000 test aircraft. And then on the right side is actually their chief, what do they call him? He's like an engineering design authority, basically. He gets to make all the decisions on the avionics system. And if anybody can see, there's Logan, who's another flight test pilot up there in the cockpit, giving us the thumbs up as well, too. So as you take your leap from your engineering curriculum and into the employment arena, you'll more than likely find yourself on a project or product that you are not the consumer. If you're not the targeted consumer for your own product, do you think it'd still be a good idea to be able to think like your customer? Of course, absolutely it would be. So this seems like an obvious connection, but then why does this get missed so often in the engineering environment? Why would the engineer, whom I knew to be a very smart person, design a system that did not agree with what the Bombardier pilot had wanted? This is, in fact, a fairly common occurrence among engineering. So how often have you seen a cartoon, something similar to this? I think that this is a pretty good one, although it may be embellished just a little bit, but it actually does reflect a lot of cases that we run into inside school and also in the industry. So as you kind of go through it, I'm sure some of you have actually had some experience with this, and even your classes, and maybe a classroom project. So, you know, on the bottom right corner there, it's really what the customer wanted and what they needed in the end. But there's all these steps and people involved and communication issues that come up that you really get a whole bunch of different aspects to it of what the defined scope of this is. So I personally like how the customer was billed. I think that one's pretty funny. All right, so what can we do as engineers to ensure that we are in alignment with the customer? So I took a look at this, and I broke it down to 3 easy steps. Step number 1, who is your customer? Defining your customer is critical. Is it the end user? Is it another systems team who you're defining requirements for? Because as an engineer, we're developing to what are called requirements, which is basically a set of specifications that we're constrained to make our design towards. Or is it the customer simply the person with the checkbook? Not all the times is the user of your product the same as the person with the money bag. For me, I understand if my customer was the Bombardier engineering team, is it the pilots, is it their marketing team? Because I have to consider their customers as well too, which could be perhaps Matthew McConaughey. Of course, oftentimes the reality is that the customer is really a combination of people. And so all of these parties really should be considered at the same time. Step number 2, what does your customer expect? This may be easy in some cases because your customers could provide very clear requirements that they have for their product. Maybe these expectations are a little bit ambiguous and up for interpretation. Well, you should definitely ensure that you do know and have same alignments with these expectations. Also, does your customer know their expectations? Maybe you're working on a product to answer a need that is not actually known yet to the customer. For example, these 2 products here, 30 years ago, do you think everybody knew that they had to have these in every single household or their pocket or carried on them at all times? So again, that's fitting a need that they may not actually have known yet. Step number 3, evaluate your product. Does the design either meet, exceed, or replace a current expectation? If you're replacing their expectations, you better be sure that the original need is sufficed and that you're not engineering new features without scratching the real itch. Put yourself in their shoes, because what would you do if you were the customer? Now, I want to touch back on a couple of loose ends a little bit, because Inevitably, when I kind of talk about this with some people, there's people out there that say things like, yeah, but I don't have visibility to what the end user uses it for, and I just design what somebody else tells me to do. Or they say, yeah, but I just do documentation only. Or they'll say things like, yeah, but I actually don't create anything of like a physical existence. Well, a product can be anything that's an output from the work that you put in. So it does not have to be a physical piece of equipment or a physical structure. The same principles still apply here in the consumer or user of your output. And so you need to ensure that the consumer gets what he or she wants in a way he or she needs it. Lastly, I want to mention a few other things here. Number one, I seek all opportunities to continue expanding myself. I truly feel that learning is very important, and so I know that it's continuous. You have to keep working with your customers. You have to keep seeking higher education as well to continue learning about the business environment around yourself, and that's what I'm pursuing to do. And number two, with Rockwell Collins assistance, I actually wanted to literally put myself in the customer's seat by going and pursuing my own pilot license, because what better way to understand how the pilot uses our avionics system than being a pilot myself. So understanding the customer is essential for a long, rewarding path in engineering. And here I just wanted to leave you with one more time the quote saying, if you always keep your focus on the customer, you'll be successful in anything that you do. Thank you.
Thanks, Ben. Ashish Arun is a senior software engineer working on flight display applications for business and regional aircraft at Rockwell Collins. He graduated from the University of Colorado Boulder in 2012 with his master's in aerospace engineering. He's a huge soccer fan, loves to travel, and is a part-time electronic music DJ. He likes to motivate young professionals to challenge the status quo and follow their dreams no matter what. His favorite quote is, if you're not living on the edge, you're taking up too much space. Ladies and gentlemen, Ashish Arun.
All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you for that warm welcome. I'm Ashish, and I grew up in India, okay? And when I was about 6 years old, I used to be super excited when my aunt and uncle would come visit India from London. That was because, obviously, I would get chocolates and gifts and all these fun things. But the more important part was I would get to go to the airport with my dad and watch planes land. Now, we had this game that we played, me and my dad. We would be just outside the runway, and we watch all these planes landing. And we try to guess what airline it was by looking at the tail design. I should remember that. Thank you. So we would try to guess the airline by looking at the tail design, right? And my favorite airline back then was the Korean airline. And I called it the Pepsi airline. Close enough, right? So back then, the issue was inadequate information. There were very few information boards that were there at the airports. So if there was a delay or a cancellation or some kind of information that needed to be passed on to you, it was super difficult to get through. Fast forward 20 years, today, every single thing that you need is available on an app, right? You know exactly how much time your flight is delayed. You know when it's going to land. You know when it's going to take off. You have all that information available. In fact, you have apps that tell you exactly where a plane is in the sky at any given moment of time. So from aircraft systems to in-flight entertainment systems to ground-based systems, today, flying is no longer about just getting to your destination. It's about the whole experience. So what is the future of aviation, right? The first thing people say is reduce travel times, which means getting to your destination faster. And the first thing that comes to mind is supersonic travel. Now, supersonic travel is not a new concept. You all have heard of the Concorde, right? It was in operation from 1970 to about 2003, and it flew at speeds of Mach 2, approximately, which is around 1,300 miles an hour, right? That's fast. But it was discontinued for three main reasons. One, it was not safe. There were safety concerns. Two, it wasn't economical. And three, and most important, it was too loud. But in the last decade, companies like Ariane Corporation, Airbus, Lockheed Martin, NASA, JAXA, Boom Technology are all coming up with the next generation supersonic aircrafts. The good thing is these new aircrafts are safer, they're more economical, and they're actually quieter. In fact, in 2015, Rockwell Collins was awarded a project by NASA to actually have a visual representation of the sonic boom that is created during supersonic flight on your cockpit display. It would help the pilots alter the flight plan and flight path to avoid populated areas and avoid the impact of this sonic boom. Now, in the next decade, supersonic flight is going to be a reality again. And it's going to help you get to your destination in a fraction of the time that it takes you today. The next thing that comes to mind when I'm talking about getting to your destination faster is longer range flights. Now, like I said, I grew up in Mumbai. Okay? So if I decide to go home, it takes me about 24 to 28 hours to get home. 28 hours. And it does not mean that I'm actually flying for 28 hours. It takes me about 18 hours to actually be in the air and all of that. But stopovers and layovers are what take the rest of the time. And with people traveling all over the world for business and pleasure, there's a strong push to reduce these times. Which brings me to my next question. Does anybody know what is the longest nonstop commercial flight today? That's pretty close, yes. But they started a new route from Auckland, New Zealand to Dubai. But that was the one before that. Pretty good. And if you thought, and that's basically like an 8,800-mile journey, taking about 17 hours in flight. Now, if you think that is too long, in February 2017, you're going to have Qatar Airways fly from, again, Auckland, New Zealand, to Doha in Qatar, and that's going to be an 18-hour flight. And if that is too long, Singapore Airlines is going to start a service from Singapore to New York City, which is going to take 19 hours. Okay? Now, how are these aircraft manufacturing companies able to do this? It's because of advancements in fuel burn technology, streamlined fuselage designs, efficient engines, and a multitude of different things. Think of it like a senior design project, right? All these engineers just get together in a room, they do a lot of research, they do a lot of prototyping, they come up with calculations and all of that stuff, then they do testing, wind tunnel testing, and they build something that is completely new. They're breaking barriers, they're pushing up boundaries way behind. The only difference is they get to spend a little more money than what you guys get to do in the college. Which brings me to the next topic, is efficiency. Now, efficiency has been a hot topic in the aviation industry over the last couple of years. And the first thing that comes to mind when you talk about efficiency is fuel efficiency, right? Now, companies like GE and Rolls-Royce, who are making all these engines for aircrafts, are trying to make more efficient engines with the option of using alternate fuels, which we call hybrid engines. And through this, we've been able to reduce the fuel burn by approximately 1% per year from 1985 to today, which is significant considering we want to be making the world greener, we want to reduce costs to the airlines, which in turn reduces costs for us as passengers. They're also coming up with innovative ideas like formation flights. Now picture the East Coast of the United States, and you have all these flights flying from New York, Washington, all the way to Europe. What if all of them could fly in a formation? It'll help reduce the drag that is associated with flight and improve the efficiency, right? Now, I understand that formation flights and these alternate fuels are still something that's in their nascent stages of research, and it'll take some time. But the one thing that is causing a lot of issues today, and that's what people are working on improving, is weather-related issues. Now, weather accounts for approximately 69% of all the delays and cancellations today, right? And when it comes to weather, it's not just about efficiency anymore. It's also about safety. So engineers at Rockwell are trying to build something called as the Integrated Surveillance System. Now, what this is essentially a weather radar system combined with a terrain awareness system and a traffic collision and avoidance system, all integrated together. Now, this specific system talks to your flight controls and your autopilot systems and automates the process of detection of these weather phenomena and gives you mitigation options. All the pilot has to do is choose mitigation options that are provided to him, and it makes their life a lot easier. On similar lines, they're also working on auto-land systems. Now notice, at about 200 feet above ground, just before landing, you can barely see those runway lights. Now engineers all around the world and at Rockwell are trying to build auto-land systems that can land in zero visibility conditions. This means that if there was an airport where you could literally not see anything, the plane could land by itself. And engineers are actually testing them out right now. Now, these are highly complex systems, and there's a lot of testing that's involved, a lot of real-world scenarios that they need to go and check it out and get some feedback from pilots about how these aircrafts are behaving. So it's a really exciting field to work on. The third thing is energy conservation and reuse. Now, when a plane is landing, there's a lot of kinetic energy that is created, right? Now, companies are working on harnessing this kinetic energy, converting them to electricity, and saving them with the battery technology that we have today. They're then using them to basically have assisted takeoffs and taxi systems. This is basically amazing, right? A lot of your fuel is taken up while you're taxiing and while you're trying to take off. So this will improve the efficiency by a huge margin. The third space, where there's a lot of research going on right now, is the passenger experience space. And the one thing that everybody talks about when you talk about passenger experience is connectivity, right? Today, everything is about being smart. You have smartphones, smartwatches, smart homes, smart everything. And aircrafts are doing the same thing. They're becoming smarter. The only thing is they coined the term as a connected aircraft. So pilots used to have charts and maps and all these big things and big logbooks. All of that is now an iPad app. In all the flights that you guys take, you basically have Wi-Fi on your aircraft. It is slow, it is expensive, but it is there. Now think of this, okay? It's May 2017, the new episode of Game of Thrones is out, and you want to watch it, but you have to take a flight. Well, how cool would it be to watch the entire Game of Thrones episode live on the plane in HD, right? Before you land and get all the spoilers on Facebook and whatnot, and then it's all ruined for you. You know what I'm talking about. It's happened to me. So, companies are trying to do two main things when it comes to this. One, they're trying to increase the bandwidth of data that can be transmitted to and from the aircraft, right? The second thing that they're working on are compression algorithms. I don't know how many of you have watched Silicon Valley, but they're doing what Pied Piper essentially was trying to do in the show. They're trying to compress the amount of data compress the data that you have into smaller packets and transmit them, but at the same time maintain the quality of that content that is being transmitted. Combining both of this will make watching stuff online, in air, in HD, possible pretty soon. And this is a very classic example of how computer and network engineering concepts apply so directly to aviation. The second aspect of research is obviously your actual in-flight experience, right? We've all traveled in economy, and we always complain about the seats being too small, the guy in front is going to push back, and you'll be like, what's going on? It's too crowded, right? Now, when I'm talking about long-haul flights that I talked to you about before, these 18-hour, 24-hour flights, people traveling all around the world, air travel is becoming stressful. So companies are actually using large touchscreen displays and virtual reality to create a day and night scenario for you, so that when you go to reach your destination and you land, you feel refreshed, and they're even claiming that they can get rid of jet lag completely. Again, They're coming up with innovative technologies to make economy seating a lot more roomier and flexible so you can move around in your seat quite a bit. And they're also coming up with bunk bed setups for long-haul flights and using the space very effectively. Now, all these research concepts and topics that people are working on, it's impossible for one specific type of engineer to do it, right? You have aerospace engineers working, you have thermodynamics, mechanical, electronics, electrical, computers, networking engineers, and human factor engineers, all these different kind of engineers working together. And that's why companies like Rockwell hire engineers from all different engineering disciplines. And it's when all of these engineers work together in tandem, that's when you can make a plane that actually weighs 1 million pounds fly, right? Now, a little bit about my story. I grew up in India, did my bachelor's in electronics and instrumentation engineering. And that time, my focus was automation systems. Then I came to the US and did my master's in aerospace engineering, and my focus was flight control systems. And today, I'm a software engineer. So electronics, aerospace, software, how does it all come into place? It's because when you create a system like this, like the one Ben showed you as well, I work on the fusion displays as well, you need people with different backgrounds and different thoughts and have a diversity of thought to innovate and build these kind of systems. You don't have to be an aerospace engineer, you don't have to be an aerospace engineer to be working in aviation. And you don't have to be a software engineer to code. I'm an aerospace engineer, and I had no software background when I joined Rockwell. And today I code in Python and C on a daily basis. There are skills you will learn and master over the course of time, but that unique thought and those unique thoughts and those unique ideas that you bring to the table, that's what makes you invaluable to a company. So if you ask, now each and every one of you are going to be building the next generation systems, next generation products, next generation aircrafts. And so if you ask me, what is the future of commercial aviation? I'd say it's each and every one of you. Thank you.
Thanks, Ashish. Sean Humes, our next speaker, is a very passionate senior engineering manager in the Business and Regional Aircraft Systems Department at Rockwell Collins. Sean has over 6 years of experience at Rockwell Collins working with various programs spanning from the North African C-130 Flight 2 retrofit to one of the first applications of the company's Proline Fusion Touch. Since the age of 4, he knew he wanted to be involved in the operation or design of aircraft. Sean received his Bachelor of Science in Aerospace Engineering and a minor in Economics from Iowa State University. Sean is also the focal for aerospace engineering on the Rockwell Collins Iowa State University campus team. The Chicago area native has a passion for social and economic development, being a pilot, family life, and spiritual well-being. He currently enjoys life in Cedar Rapids with his wife and 2 sons. Ladies and gentlemen, Sean Humes.
Hope you guys can hear me. And thanks for the warm welcome. I think I have an idea what that was about. So I want to sincerely thank you all for taking the time to be here and skipping Thirsty Thursdays to be here tonight. So 5 years into my career, and I still remember where students' priorities lie. Talk about career stuff, hit up Welsh Ave for some drinks. That's a tough choice. In all seriousness, I wanted to spend some time talking with you all today about perception and how you can leverage your personal brand to achieve your dreams. I'll talk about this in a minute, but first I want to share with you all an excerpt from a riveting work, one of the most important theatrical works of the 21st century. In this moving piece, a life coach instructs a helpless romantic about how to create a positive perception of himself by imagining an iceberg and about how 90% of its mass lies below the surface. He clarifies that who he is, things like accounting, business, are all just a very small portion of a much deeper and richer him. He wants the young man to understand that there's so much more that people don't see about him, but would likely love and enjoy. However, the coach seemingly contradicts himself by telling the daring romantic what to do, what to say, and how to act. In the end, though, the young businessman shows some of his true self to the person he's trying to impress and gains success through this. It's ironic. You must be all wondering what daring tale that so elegantly references Freudian psychology is. Why, none other than the 2005 romantic comedy Hitch featuring Will Smith and Kevin James. That's right, I'm a 26-year-old man that can create a thesis from a romantic flick, and I'm really proud of it. All jokes aside, perception, which is how others view you, it can be everything, especially in the workplace. Think about how vital that 10% is, that portion of you that people view from day to day. Most professionals think about this and say, well, I can't change how others view me. People will see what they want to see. And this is a completely warranted approach, but is it truly the end-all, be-all? Is it the only approach? Hold on to that thought and we'll come back to it. Before we answer that question, I want to talk a little bit about the factors that play into perception in the workplace as I've experienced it at Rockwell Collins. You see, at most companies, perception will be based upon how you perform to the core values and the mission statements of that organization. Your peers will observe your knowledge on a topic, your technical skills, how well you deliver a concept, how quickly you rattle off information. But what about the rest of us and the rest of who we are? For example, many engineers also enjoy things such as building powerful networks, working well with others, thinking outside the box, and then using advanced and cutting-edge technology to solve a difficult problem. These are all vital attributes that you really should use in the workplace, because they can be emphasized by the things that lie below the surface, the things that people can't see, like an iceberg. So the answer to my earlier question is, no, don't accept how other people view you if you do not agree with it, because you have the power to change it. You have the power to change their perception, and this is what I want to get through to you guys today. In the realm of engineering, some new employees believe that technical skills and attributes are the only ones that are important in the workplace. This is why the ideal engineer is typically thought to look like this. While technical skills and attributes are the foundation for success, there are other critical attributes that others will require of you. In reality, engineers, they come from all kinds of backgrounds, and they share passions in addition to their technical prowess. One thing I love about Rockwell Collins are our core values: relationships, commitment, innovation, and integrity. You will notice that half of these values are largely non-technical. This allows our employees to build a perception of themselves that use more than just their technical competencies. However, I think we all get the message about how we can use non-traditional and non-technical personal attributes to set ourselves apart. And we've heard it all our lives from our coaches, our teachers, and our parents. What I think really is vital is how this relates to your brand and your goal and going after your dreams. The way I imagine, yeah, that's right, we're going back to kindergarten, full swing here. The way I imagine the triad between your brand, your goals, and your perception is by imagining your brand as a mountain, separated by some distance from your goals. You see, many people in the workplace have difficulty figuring out how to get from their brand to their goals. Perception is the bridge that connects your brands with your goals. However, we start our careers largely without a brand, and typically without goals, and of course, without a perception. However, as we begin our careers, we continue working in the workplace, we end up developing our goals and our brand. And others also develop a perception about us. However, as my little illustration shows, the perception that others may build about us, may build for us, are largely disconnected from our goals. And really, what good is that to us, right? If we want to be able to get from our brand to our goals, we want to be able to bridge that gap. Honestly, I was not always that great at managing perception. I knew I always wanted to be an engineering manager. And for this position, leadership and technical skills were among the most important that people wanted to see in a new manager. However, a skill that I always displayed that people thought stood out about me was a strong verbal communication. All of a sudden, everybody thought I was the next big marketing guy. Well, I thought, well, that's okay. Maybe later, but right now I really want to be an engineering manager. I didn't really make a purposeful effort to have verbal communication be the most important thing about me that stood out, but it inherently came to the surface, the viewable portion of what people saw of me. You see, I really enjoy communication and talking with others, and that was inherent to others, and they picked up on that. You really have to remember that our peers and our friends will pick up on the things about us that come to the surface most naturally. And it's these things that they'll pin something to. It's up to us to build that something for them to attach these observations to. For me and my goals of becoming an engineering manager, I needed to adjust something about the perception that people had of me so that I could suit my goals, so that I could suit my dreams. This is where personal brand comes in. Building your brand is what gives context to your perception. Personal branding is a practice of marketing yourself or even selling yourself and your career as a brand. And it's something that's very important for all of us to understand how to do. You see, we have to go through our lives and actually sell ourselves to the people that are important. What does this mean, though, from a practical sense? We should attempt to exemplify actions, behaviors, and attitudes that fit a brand or image that we build for ourselves. And that way, things will go well for us. It will fit our goals and our dreams, and we'll get there. Eventually, if you do this right, important people such as peers, managers, mentors, and who knows, maybe even an executive, will notice this brand that you've built for yourself and more easily align you with the opportunities that you want for yourself. Brands, you have to understand, have a subconscious effect. And this is what can make them so powerful. Your behaviors, when done consistently, will actually be viewed as being very genuine. I know you all must be thinking, well, wait, I'm supposed to act my way into success in my career? No, that's not what I'm trying to tell you. This is where we have to bring our iceberg analogy back into play. Your brand, while being purposefully aligned to your goals, must also be true to yourself. When I considered my brand, it was evident why people saw me as the next marketing manager, and maybe not so much yet as the next engineering manager. I thought about the things that I enjoyed, that maybe I could use to build a brand that would scream leader of people. I had a passion for diversity and still do. So I took an active role in our organization's retention chair for our African American Professionals Forum. I bolstered my activities in campus recruitment. I came up with creative events like the one that you're seeing here today. I took on really tough challenges at work that I thought proved my critical thinking and my technical leadership skills. These are all things that I enjoy very much and are true to me and I'm very passionate about. You see, I used some of those things that are below the surface and brought them to the surface to bolster the things that I enjoyed. And this helped me build a brand that was genuine and self-sustaining. Not an act, but rather a well-directed show of myself, who I am, and who I wanted to be. That's enough about me. Let's take a quick look at a couple real-world examples. In the 1990s, there was a actress by the name of Jessica Alba who, at the time, kind of rose to fame with some mixed reviews about her acting, be that as it may. She did it, she was very passionate about acting, but she wasn't so fond of the perception that it imposed on her. A few years ago, though, she sought out to start a billion-dollar company and did. During this whole period of time, she underwent a transformation of herself and her perception to become this business powerhouse that she is today. And to some success, she landed herself on the cover of Forbes magazine and now is the one of the proud leaders of a very powerful company. Let's try another example. Extra credit to anybody who knows who this is. This young man was a test pilot in the US Air Force, and he really, really loved it. Many thought he would do it for the rest of his life. But there was something below the surface that he really enjoyed. You see, he really, really enjoyed building unique aircraft, and he did so for many, many years and decades to follow. He went on to create some of the most iconic and groundbreaking and earth-shattering space aircraft and spacecraft in the future. And I think he inspired many of us who are in this room today. I know he inspired me. This is none other than the legendary Burt Rutan. As you can see, if you can learn how to build a good brand, set good goals, you'll enjoy a perception that bridges the gap between both. I'm going to quote another one of my favorite people here. Branding demands commitment to continue re-innovation, striking chords with people to stir up their emotions. You have to be also committed to imagination. And it's really easy to be cynical about these things or such things, but it's way harder to be successful. So I, in the words of Richard Branson, want to inspire you to go build your brand and go achieve your dreams. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. Jacqueline Hoke is a principal technologist in the Rockwell Collins Advanced Technology Center, ATC. During her 9 years with the company, she has had several roles within ATC in engineering, technical project management, and strategy development. Jacqueline performs research in many areas, most recently in human performance assessment. Her primary responsibilities are setting priorities for internal R&D investment within ATC, and engaging customers from DoD research labs, the FAA, and NASA. She earned a Bachelor's of Science in Applied Mathematics, a Master's in Electrical and Computer Engineering, and is currently pursuing her doctorate in Electrical and Computer Engineering. Ladies and gentlemen, Jacqueline Hoke.
All right, is this working? Yeah, all right. So Sean brought us to kindergarten. Apparently, I'm going to bring us back even further here. So Dr. Seuss had it right. So congratulations. Today is your day. You're off to great places. You're off and away. You have brains in your head. You have feet in your shoes. You can steer yourself any direction you choose. It's the beginning of one of my favorite Dr. Seuss books. And as we all grow up, maybe hearing some of those Dr. Seuss books or reading them ourselves, we go through many evolutions of, this is what I want to be when I grow up. Those directions we choose. I was no different. A Midwestern gal growing up in the frozen wastelands of northern Minnesota. And my list included things like a figure skater and a dancer of some sort, but I had to accept that I'm really uncoordinated. That wasn't going to happen. So it became an explorer, an astronaut, a fighter pilot. I was going to be a real badass, you know? So after a few evolutions after that of a writer and a couple of other things, I decided as I was exiting high school and going into college that I was going to teach. So I don't know about all of you, but as my mind was fairly made up, I still really was daunted to think that I'm about to make a decision that's going to affect the rest of my life. The rest of my life. So how many of you still feel that way some days, even though you're a couple years into your major? Anybody? Yeah, thank you. I know I still feel that way when I consider career opportunities, and I'm nearly 10 years in. And hopefully you deduce that things changed in college, because I'm not a school teacher. So, whoops, dang it. Oh, I spoiled it. So hopefully this isn't making any of you that, I'm sorry. So why am I telling you this? Promise, I'm not here to make you question the decision that you're making. I'm here to encourage you that you're making an amazing decision. If you get a degree in engineering, you can be anything you want to be. Engineering degree is a door opener. It's a springboard. It's going to allow you to maybe get a job, sometimes when that can be tough. And once you're in the door, as Dr. Seuss said, oh, the places you'll go. So how many of you are thinking, no way? I love what I'm learning. Being technical is my passion. Damn it, I'm going to be an engineer the entire career. My response to that is fantastic, because some of my first mentors at the company, they were engineers their entire career. And they recently retired after hugely successful and hugely satisfying careers. And I have peers now who, they truly love what they're doing, and they will be an engineer their entire career. Engineering's problem solving. It's creativity. It's a lot of exciting things. And there's many ways in a company like Rockwell or other companies like Rockwell that you can shape a technical career. Hopefully this isn't making any of you that aren't quite so convinced squirm in your seats, because I was and still am one of you. Maybe not so decided ones. And I'm going to tell you my story in hopes of inspiring you to realize you don't have to be convinced. So in college, I slogged through several stints in food service, which I quickly and happily rolled up on my resume into a single line item that said, non-technical employment, date X to date Y, just to show the unbroken employment history. After that, I got a fantastic internship at Rockwell. I loved it. It actually ended up shaping my school research project. And then I got offered a part-time job while I was finishing my degree. Awesome, right? Guess what? After a couple years, I realized that I was an okay engineer, but it really wasn't my passion. I resonated with when Dr. Seuss said, and when you're alone, there's a very good chance you'll meet some things that scare you right out of your pants. There are some down the road between hither and yon that can scare you so much you don't want to go on. I was worried about going on. What am I going to do with my career? But I didn't let it scare me out of my pants. I knew there were plenty of other things that I could do now that I was in the door. Because the mentality, the analytical skills, the ability to leverage different people's experiences and backgrounds that you're going to develop with an engineering background, that can be applied in any role, any job responsibility. So my first step away from technical work wasn't a big one, but it was an amazing one. I moved into technical project management, which is a fancy way of saying that I was a project lead in charge of budgets and schedule deadlines and making sure each member of the team knows what they're supposed to be doing every day. In this role, I got to put myself in the shoes of a fighter pilot. We were researching a new way for a pilot to train. It's kind of like a mix between Call of Duty or World of Warcraft or other online games like that. But we were connecting people together in that virtual world, but we were also connecting that virtual world with the real world. We were creating a way to train for pilots flying in live aircraft to actually interact with pilots flying simulators on the ground, all completely aware of each other. It's a really difficult thing to do. So in order to lead that team and to understand how it would work, how that can be effective training, I had to understand how fighter pilots think and train and do what they do every day. I had to put myself in their shoes. So for those of you who find that your passion lies in a leadership role like that, you're going to find that it enables you to put yourself into anybody's shoes in any of the markets that we serve, that customer mindset. It doesn't stop there. So I was managing the project, but I didn't actually have people management responsibilities. I wasn't in charge of the people working with me. But these project management roles, they can quickly turn into those people management roles if that's where your passion lies. And that opens the door to progress up the management chain if that's your career aspiration. So after being involved in some other really cool projects, like developing something close to Siri for flying an airplane, scary thought, huh? I took a big step outside my comfort zone into my current role, and it's got a lot of different responsibilities that I'm gonna roll up into one big umbrella called strategy. So in my strategy role, I do business development and marketing, which translates to I get to travel all over the place and build relationships with my customers. I put myself in their shoes. I understand what their needs are, what the problems they're trying to solve are, and I get to show them why and how we're the best ones to solve those problems for them. And at the end of the day, that's how a company succeeds. It's how you sell your products. I also do strategic planning. So when I meet with those customers, sorry, that's my son. I love that picture. I spend a lot of time listening when I meet with those customers too. I get to listen to the areas they're spending their money on, what they see as those future research areas, those future technology challenges. That influences where we spend our money, and that positions us for future success because we're aligned with our customers. I get to do proposal writing. So part of getting the customers to pick us to do research in new areas and to develop those new products for them is to write a proposal. It's creative writing. We have to write a compelling story about how we're going to solve those problems, how we're going to create that new technology for them. And it has to be a really good one because we're competing against all those other companies out there that are writing their own story. Ours needs to be the best for the customer to pick us. I also get to support innovation across the company. So I'm involved in a program that we select employees' new ideas for funding. It's like Kickstarter meets Shark Tank. And it's got the goal of kind of getting an idea off the ground, doing a quick prototype to see if the idea really has merit. And then I also get to work on a team that decides what new ideas we patent. Because that means great engineers like all you sitting in the room here, the ideas you come up with can't be copied by another company. It's a lot of different things rolled into one job, right? Through it all, I've actually got to be a bit of a teacher, too. Through pretty much every role I've had, I have mentored other employees within the company in these various roles and responsibilities. And it goes beyond the wall of the company. Things like this. I participate in STEM initiatives geared towards students of all ages, trying to give them insight into what it means to be an engineer. I use the term engineer loosely. It can be all of these things. I'm still an engineer by title, actually, but you can see my day-to-day responsibilities have moved beyond the technical tasks. I've reshaped my career in several different ways, several different times. And the exciting thing is if you think back to my original list, most of those ways have actually scratched almost all of those itches that I had as a kid, minus the whole skater dancer thing. So what's next for me? I don't actually know for sure. Great thing, I don't have to know. So that's me, my story. I'm going to give you a couple others to think about quickly, too. 3 great examples. Elon Musk, Lonnie Johnson, Kelly Ortberg. Some of those names you may recognize, some of them you may not. Elon Musk, he holds a degree in applied physics, which is close enough to engineering in my book. I assume most of you have heard of him. He's kind of famous. You know, things like PayPal, SpaceX, Tesla Motors. Lonnie Johnson, he's a former US Air Force and NASA Jet Propulsion Lab mechanical and nuclear engineer. He's worked on things like the stealth bomber, the Galileo mission to Jupiter, the Cassini mission to Saturn, and now he's the president and founder of his own research company with multiple spin-off companies. He's most famous for inventing the Super Soaker. Last but definitely not least, of course, Kelly Ortberg. Kelly has a degree in mechanical engineering, and after a highly successful career, he's the chairman, president, and CEO of Rockwell Collins. It's the reason I get to be here doing fun things like this with you. Some pretty exciting examples of where you can go with an engineering degree, right? So I'm challenging you. I'm challenging you to truly embrace this path that you've started on. Realize that there's going to be exciting branches along those paths that you can follow or even create for yourself. You can shape your career into anything you want it to be. And as Dr. Seuss said, And will you succeed? Yes. 98.75% guaranteed. You'll move mountains. So today's your day. Your mountain's waiting. Get on your way. Dr. Seuss sure had it right. Thank you.
So at this time, we're going to start the Q&A portion, but before that, can we get another round of applause for all of our great speakers tonight? It's been awesome job, everyone. So while we get set up here, we have 2 microphones down the stairwell. So if you want to form a line around those, if you have questions, if you're not comfortable asking a question from everybody, we will be having a little less formal question session after this. So.
Don't be shy, we're all people. We put our pants on the same way you do in the morning.
I don't. Any questions? Come on, there's got to be some questions.
Yeah, I have one over here. This one's for Jacqueline, but if anyone can answer, that would be great. What would you say it was about your application for your internship first with Rockwell Collins that you first originally got? You mentioned that. That really made you stand out and eventually get the position you did.
Well, so the funny thing is I didn't actually apply for my internship. When I finished my math degree, I was a little lost with what I was going to do because I was originally going to be a teacher, and I found out about halfway through that that's not what I wanted to do. So I got the math degree, and there's not a lot you can do with it, other than go to school. Getting a math degree is great, but with a bachelor's in math, it usually means you're going on for additional education of some sort. But I had applied for a job at Rockwell just to throw my resume in after that while I was still working in food service, actually. And part of the way through my master's degree, I got a call saying, hey, I found your resume in a database somewhere. I've got an internship position open that's looking for a math background like yours. And so that's how I got my internship. So I didn't actually apply for it, but I encourage you all to apply for internships. But really, it's just hard work, and I think one of the big things that allowed me to stand out is, I'm going to latch on to Sean here a little bit, communication skills. I had a number of opportunities during my internship to present my research results to executive leadership, and just really being able to communicate your ideas can make you stand out, and it's one of the biggest things that led to the part-time offer while I was finishing my degree.
Thank you.
I'm just going to start calling out.
Yeah, I mean, we have more than, how many of you guys did internships at Rockwell before starting full-time? I mean, you guys could provide any insight too for the students out here?
Sure. So I guess I'll tell a little bit about my story. I'm going to start way back. From when I was really young, 4 years old, so I always knew I wanted to be involved with aerospace engineering. Always was in love with the F-14 Tomcat. That was like, if a machine can be a hero, that was my hero. Kind of Megatron-ish, I don't know.
I was going to say, what about the Transformers? Yeah.
So I always knew I wanted to go in aerospace. So, but as I began my career, or my time at Iowa State, considering a lot of the career fields and the different job profiles at some of the leading companies, I knew I didn't want to be focused on one small area. And I mean, I have really good friends that, they do CFD on a turbine blade and they enjoy it, But for me, I wanted a wider view of the aircraft. I wanted to be involved with the aircraft from kind of top to bottom, see it operating, see the pilots and the crew members that operate it. So when I got the opportunity to go to Rockwell Collins about my sophomore year, I jumped on it just to try it out at first. And I ended up going there. I was lucky. I had probably the best manager in the company. He was the manager who hired Phil Jasper, the vice president of our government systems organization. He also hired in our Jeff Standersky, our diversity and inclusion and human resources vice president. So I had a really great experience that summer, and I stayed every summer after that, and I got on a full-time position that kind of led to where I am today.
I'll go on the other side of it. I actually didn't have an internship. I know that that's kind of what the specific question was for, but since I'm going to be here next week on Tuesday for the career fair,
Shameless
on the other side aspect of it, what I'm looking for and our other recruiters are looking for is going to be a combination of three things. I'll be transparent about it. GPA up front, but it's not a deal breaker or anything. And a part of that I also encourage is that, so as recruiters, we understand the engineering curriculum. We know that you're really busy. We know what kind of classes you're taking. We're very, in fact, kind of engaged or involved with the curriculum in some degree. So we do know what it's like. So apart from having your GPA position, it's also, the second part is a combination of your communication skills and also, I would say, what the position that we're trying to fill is for. So it's more just kind of matching your personality, your type into a position. That's kind of the second part. And then the third part is, I think, undertouched and undermentioned, but it's your involvement in other activities. So whether that's engineering campus clubs, if it's things that you're doing outside of class, in fact, even working in a food industry. What keeps you busy? Because we know that your engineering curriculum is tough, has a lot going on. But if you have a 4.0 student, but that's just your only thing that you're involved in, sometimes it helps to show that you spend your time at another job. You're doing something else as well, too, or you're involved in engineering clubs. We look at that as a pretty significant portion of it. And so that's what I encourage if you really are looking for an internship, a co-op experience or something. So just your involvement outside of class.
I'm actually going to jump on that because I have, as some of my mentorship roles, I was responsible for mentoring and managing some interns working on a summer project. And as we were going through resumes, looking at who to hire, the manager that was actually responsible for hiring the intern said to me, I would rather hire a student who has some additional experiences on their resume and maybe has a lower GPA than somebody who does school, has a 4.0 and hasn't done anything else. Round yourself out because those experiences are what we need. That helps shape your awareness of everything that's going on and it makes you a better engineer.
Out of curiosity, just a show of hands of how many people are Make to Innovate here? That's what I thought. Yeah, so Make to Innovate is a really good program. You guys are in good company. That's something that when we see it on the resume, it's something that we automatically consider just because of the real-time engineering experience you're getting just from your technical projects.
That brought a bunch of people down for questions.
Hi. So my first question is, so how do each of you define success in your careers, and how do you go about accomplishing that? So is it fulfilling a contract? Is it meeting some customer expectations? Can you talk a little bit about that?
I could take it, or you could take it.
Hello. So that's a great question, and it really depends on what role you're in at that moment. So I always look at it as two things. One is your short-term goal, and that could be, like Ben mentioned, catering to your customer, creating the next best product for you, and that could be a success. And for example, I worked on the C-Series aircraft for Bombardier, and that just flew on July 15th of this year for the first time, and I was watching that video of takeoff, and it was success to me. It was completely satisfying. But that is something you work on and you build something and then it's there, right? But in the long term, success is whatever, at least for me, is whatever makes me happy. And when I walk into work, I don't have to drag my feet to work, right? It is something that makes me happy to come back to work the next day. I think that's how I put it.
Yeah, I think that's a great example. So for me, I think what defines success for me over the years has changed. I think when I first started, I didn't really know what the job was going to entail necessarily, but my manager established these goals. I wanted to meet these targets, and if I met them, that should feel like success, right? So as I've been at the company kind of understood myself a little bit more. I'll give you an example of what my definition of success is. I got coffee the other morning, and a young engineer, a couple years out of college, struck up a conversation with me. Hey, how's it going? And he said, well, my mom wants me to move south, so I really like what I'm doing, but I guess I've just started looking at job postings online, outside of Rockwell. And I thought, I can think of a lot of managers in Richardson, just outside of Dallas, that would love to have this kid. So the conversation led to, well, why are you looking outside of Rockwell? Is there something that you're unhappy with? He said, no, my mom just wants me to move south. I said, well, hold on. So I reached out to a couple of people in my network. He's now working in our Richardson facility under a completely different division of government systems. He applied, first he spoke with a couple of leaders. There wasn't even an open job position, but just because I knew what demand was coming up, I was able to connect him with the right people. So for me, my definition of success is I helped somebody find a position within Rockwell without having to leave the company. And he's really happy doing what he's doing now. That's for me, my definition of my success.
That was a good question.
I'm going to throw in a little bit of a different perspective, if I may. So working in the R&D part of the company, I actually am in an organization that supports commercial and government systems, two of the three, and then there's information management systems. The three branches of the company, we support all three of those. Success for us is often, hey, that thing that I worked on 5 or so years ago, it's finally in a product today. Some of our engineers actually retire working on things that were really far out. They worked on them their entire career, and they never transitioned into a product. So that's kind of hard. That's kind of a hard thing to work on. But one of the things that I worked on during my internship actually was announced as a new product down at Land Forces Australia last week. It's the first thing I got to work on, and it was just this sense of exhilaration. Yes, we're offering a product now, and I worked on that when it was a research project. And so that's success for those of us often in that part of the business. So it's a little bit of a different perspective.
Okay. Do you know if Rockwell Collins has taken any measures for knowledge management, in the sense that if you got people who have been in the company for many years and have tremendous amount of experience, but once they retire, all of that knowledge is Rockwell Collins taking any measures to make sure that that knowledge and experience and all that useful stuff doesn't disappear, that it can
We went through a
going.
heck of a lot of that just recently. We did a retirement incentive for folks that were within a couple of years of retiring. And what did we have? Close to 500 people opt to retire. It was a great incentive package. That's actually why some of my first mentors just recently retired. And I know our knowledge management organization, we have an organization dedicated to that, really was working hard to make sure we were retaining those skills. A lot of it we do through mentoring. I mean, honestly, I will say that we strongly encourage everyone to set up mentors up and down the chain. It's one of the great ways, especially with the more senior engineers, mentoring the newer engineers coming in, or even interns, to really try and retain those skills and not let them walk out the door when 500 people retire.
I'll actually touch too. You said retire, but there's enough movement and churn in the company that employees will oftentimes, they'll be working on a project and then halfway through, they'll transition into something brand new. So that's the same thing there too. And I'd agree with, mentoring systems, and there is a lot of knowledge share that goes on. And we're very encouraged because, quite frankly, you don't know if you're going to be working on a certain project and then a new contract's awarded and you have to be moved off onto something else. It can happen unexpectedly.
Yep.
And so there's always this knowledge share that has to occur throughout the company, because you have to be able to have somebody fill in a place if the gap becomes there. So.
I noticed that you guys talked a lot about kind of varying backgrounds and how maybe you've jumped around between areas of focus. So I was just wondering, how do you think that's kind of tied in with the fact that Rockwell is such a big company and they touch on so many areas in the industry? So like, what benefits is that provided to you having that versatility within the company?
I'll take that. So starting off as a mechanical engineer, being able to do all sorts of different types of structural analysis, thermal analysis, working on both government and commercial products. Because the contingent in Cedar Rapids is so large, after a couple of years of working on something as my program ramped down, I wanted to try something different. And the beautiful thing about that is you're just creating an even more well-rounded engineer. So it's actually, in my opinion, kind of like think of a rotation program. You're priming a pipeline, you're saying, here is a possible career path that you can take. So if you're starting out in software, maybe after a while, you want a little bit higher level. You want that context that Sean really enjoys, that Ben really enjoys. So you go from software to a systems engineer. Now all of a sudden you're working with your customer and traveling a little bit more. I feel so lucky to have had the opportunity to do a lot of those things, and it's just made me who I am today. I will say a word of caution. No one ever told me, when you're jumping around, you don't want to be branded as a flight risk. You don't want somebody to see that you've moved so many times and wonder, are you going to join my team and then leave a year later? So, the advice they always gave you was stick around for a year, just give it a shot, but continue to have conversations with your leader about, hey, I really like this. This doesn't really light my fire. Because that communication is a two-way street, and then I would fully expect a leader to have a conversation back with you like, all right, I hear you. So let's make a plan to get you the opportunity that you want in the future, and tell me what that is. And if that opportunity is outside of the scope of my team, I'm going to help you find it.
One thing that also creates movement in the company is, there's a lot of ambitious engineers where they experience something for a couple of years and they're ready to move on. A lot of high-performing engineers are like that. And the company does accommodate that. Like Marita mentioned, though, if you do it too often and for not the right reasons, sometimes it can be perceived a little bit negatively. But I think for the most part, when it's done right, that actually can be a really powerful thing. Like you mentioned, the industry is a very good example. I mean, the industry is always adapting, right? 20 years ago, we wouldn't have thought we would have had this kind of energetic, private space sector of the aerospace and defense market, but now we do. So the whole industry really always is adjusting. So I think because of that, the engineers and the employees within the industry tend to do the same thing with their careers. They want to go see multiple things, and it's all about fulfilling your passion. I think nowadays a lot of us, especially our age, want to get the most out of life, and a lot of times that's experiencing rich things and things you can talk about for the rest of your life.
And I want to quickly provide some advice on a positive way to avoid that negative perception. I actually just had a discussion with my boss about that this morning. If you can convey how those movements, even if they are fairly frequent, not only benefit you, but more importantly, benefit the company as a whole, that'll help avoid that perception that it's a negative thing. You can show how it's really adding value to the company and the company's goals.
And I think the move doesn't need to be as large as even a position change. I mean, I've been at Rockwell a year and a half now. My first 6 months, I was on 8 different programs. So I jumped everywhere, and I did a little bit of everything. I was working requirements, I was testing, and I came in as an aerospace engineer. I knew what avionics were to do. I knew what displays were supposed to show, but I had no understanding of how they worked. And in that short amount of time, being able to dive around, I quickly found what I liked and what I didn't like without having to jump teams or without having to jump positions. I was able to help the software engineers and get an idea of what the code looks like, do the test development and be hands-on with the machine, do the requirements and work with the systems people that work with the customers to know where's all this coming from. And doing all that allowed me to kind of see where I wanted my career to go, what I enjoyed and what I excelled at, and how I could brand myself. So, the feeling that whenever you're coming in, you're gonna be locked in for 2 years isn't really the case, especially with what we do and how large our systems are. And there's always someone who's looking for help, and there's a good chance it's in an area that you'd be interested in learning more about.
For someone like me personally who wants to transition eventually into a managerial role, like all of you basically, what would you recommend doing now and in the future while you're employed to eventually get to that position where you'd be able to take advantage of a managerial position and manage people as well as technical work and stuff like that?
I guess I could take that. So I started, you guys all heard my story so far, but I only spent a few years as an engineer and then became a manager, which is not typically how you're supposed to do it, I guess. But I was like you, from my junior year, I knew, like I mentioned in my talk today, I knew I wanted to be a manager of some sort. I wasn't sure of what kind, so I would definitely, before you even set on that path, try and think about the things that really excite you. There's all types of managers at Rockwell, so I'll go in a little bit. They call it the triad. So you have the type of manager that goes out and sells the product, and they're called the marketing managers. Then you go out and you have the technical portion. They're the engineering managers. And then you have people that manage the money, the business. They're the program managers. And each area has a little bit different of a flavor. So, when you have some free time, you can read up a little bit about that. But I think what I would do is first discover your passion. What types of things do you like being a leader about? Do you like leading people? Do you like leading the design? Do you like managing budget and schedule? Figure that out, and then try it in areas. That's what I did. So when my senior design projects or whatever projects I was working on, I would just try different areas. One semester I would try to lead the technical development, then I would try to lead the team and keep them on task, and then I would try to manage kind of our budget and our schedule. What I ended up finding is I really enjoyed leading people. I like keeping the team motivated, so that's I started cluing in on that. So from the day I got to Rockwell Collins, I told my manager that. Be very transparent with your manager. Most managers really appreciate that. Just tell them, hey, I do really want to be a manager one day. I know I'm young, I know I just got to the company, but I'm motivated and I'm willing to learn. And I think that any manager will appreciate that. And they will set you up with the right people to do that. You also need to be proactive, and this is really important, networking. I know we hate to hear it, but networking, it's so powerful. I wouldn't have gotten the engineering management job that I did if it wasn't for my networking. It was a very kind of corner case situation, but my network was broad enough that I had people that actually, took the time to just go to the hiring manager and say, hey, I heard Sean apply to your position. He's a really great guy. I worked with him on X, Y, and Z. And I would really, want to put in a positive word for him. So networking is the next big thing once you get there. Maintain that. And then the last thing I would say is mentoring. Have 2 mentors. One mentor is a stretch mentor, who is maybe somewhere in the future who you want to become. Maybe it's a director or even a vice president. And then have your realistic mentor. So that's a person that in your immediate area will help you on those day-to-day tasks. You talk to them about, hey, working on this document, don't understand it, can you help me out? So I think those 3 things, finding your passion, being honest with your manager and building that network, and then having those mentors, that's really what will help you there. And you'll get where you want to go.
And when you're in that individual contributor role, when you first come in the door, and a really important thing, if the people management is your passion, put yourself in a position where you are leading the team of engineers that you're working with, if you can, because one of the most important and most difficult things to show is management without direct authority. So when you're their peer, but they're looking to you for leadership and they trust you and they're willing to say, go to somebody and say, absolutely, I would love to formally work for this person someday, then you're setting yourself up really well.
I have a unique perspective here, and essentially because I was exactly where you were 2 years ago. So I came into Rockwell and I said, I know I want to be a people manager in 2 or 3 years, but I love technical and I want to be a technical guy. The first thing that I noticed was managers who are really, really effective are the ones who have a lot of respect from all the engineers. So the one thing I did was basically strengthen my technical capabilities as soon as I joined. So I tried to prove myself technically, try to have a good bonding with all the other engineers, gain as much knowledge as I could from my senior engineers, from my technical leads, gather all that knowledge, and try to pass on, like Jackie said, to your peers and your engineers and the other engineers that you're working with. Once you do that, you naturally gravitate towards this technical lead or a leader position. And that's where I am right now. Like, I am a technical lead and doing a little bit of project management on the side. But that's where I am right now, and that's exactly the career path that I'm trying to get to. So there's this one thing that somebody told me when I started off was be patient where you are and learn everything that you possibly can in that particular role. But at the same time, be impatient about where you want to be and work towards gathering the skills that will get you to that next position. So I think that'll help you get to where you are.
That's a good question.
I was just curious what you, what facets or you, from your college experiences that you deem the most beneficial for evolving into the real world of business?
All right, for me, and I kind of mentioned it earlier, but just outside activities, clubs were the biggest thing for me. You kind of go in, and I feel like, everybody, all your classmates go through the same classes and everything. Not saying that you're level set, but I think what really expanded me is getting to network and work with other students, and then working as a team. So I was involved in a couple on-site or on-campus activities that involved different assets, like other engineering groups as well, too, was really big.
Hi,
So
I just received a call from this number. Are you delivering the pizzas to Hal Hall?
That's
Sean, your mic's on.
All right, are you at the door?
I think he's ordering a pizza right now. That's awesome. So that's what it was for me, is really just working with a lot of other engineering teams. I felt like I got into the industry, and it kind of gave me a leg up because that's what we have to do. As engineers, nobody works in their own closed environment. Everybody has to work as a team member. So I think that was something that really helped me.
That's what I would have said too, is your teamwork experiences. Inherently, you're going to have good experiences and not good experiences. It's just going to happen. But the important thing is, what do you take away from it? Identify what didn't go as well. Use it as a learning experience, because those are some of the stories that you're going to tell when you're talking to a recruiter when you're getting a job. Hey, tell me about a time when this went wrong. Oh, yeah, I got a great example. So it's important to be able to communicate what you learned from it, course correct, in order to meet your milestone, complete your project, get the grade that you want. So teamwork experiences are huge.
First off, I want to thank you guys for coming and spending time with us. My question for you guys is, what is one of the most difficult things that you guys have faced or challenged, and how did you guys overcome it?
We're being recruited.
I can tell you one thing. So, like Merida said, we have offices all over the world, right? And we have a big office in India called the India Design Center. And we work with them, almost all the teams work with them on a daily basis. But they're halfway around the world, and you come in the morning at 8 o'clock and they're wrapping up their day. And they come in later in the night, and then you're already asleep by then. So it's a challenging experience to work with them on a day-to-day basis. And the one thing that people don't understand is that there's a cultural difference in the way people work between here and in other parts of the world, whether it's India or France or China or wherever we do business. So I personally found it very easy because I understood, hey, okay, this makes sense. I know why they're doing something this way. But I had my counterparts having this constant struggle to work with them. And the one thing that we did was, we basically had this session when they come here for a brief period of time, like 2-3 months or 6 months, they come here, and they're always immersed in work and doing the same things again and again. But we said, you know what, let's go out, let's meet for dinner, let's talk casually, and get to know the person behind the desk, behind the job. And that, breaking those professional barriers and becoming personal friends with them, helped us solve all our problems easily. Once you relate to them as not just an IM person on your IM, and they're also just another human being trying to do their job, just that they're from a different culture, different background, that thing helped solve a lot of our problems. So it's a challenge we face every day, working with a 12-hour time difference. But things like this, we visit India for work. Gavin recently went there. They come here, and so Rockwell does a lot of things to ease those differences, but you can do that by educating each other and giving your unique perspective to the engineers and people you work around.
I absolutely agree with that. Like you said, 60 locations in 27 different countries, just embracing that global workforce and leveraging the differences. I hate to sound like a cliche here, but those differences will help you be successful if you can embrace them and understand them. And remember, the world does not revolve around Iowa, even though we're headquartered in Iowa, and I think oftentimes we can be guilty of, it's Iowa or even the United States. You have to embrace the fact that we're all over the world and learn to work together and make accommodations to work together. People come in at 6, 7 a.m. to have teleconferences with India, or have teleconferences at 11 p.m. to accommodate their workday sometimes, so that they're not bending over backwards constantly to fit our core work hours.
I think it's a great question, but I'll give a personal experience that I'm actually living and breathing it right now as my biggest challenge at Rockwell. I just transitioned, like we kind of mentioned it, but from a systems engineering role, so just in a do my type of job role, into a technical project manager. So I went from commercial systems to government systems. I went from software to hardware. So I was in an entirely new environment, and I am over our communication products, which has 300 and some engineers working in it. And all of a sudden, I'm the technical project manager, which means that I heard a great quote. It means I have all of the power, but no authority. So nobody is directly working for me, but I have to go and persuade everybody and make decisions and tell people what to do. And I'm the new guy, and this is a program that has existed for probably a year or so already. So they're underway. So I guess I'll have to report back on how that one goes. But it's very exciting. I'm learning tons, and that's exactly why I wanted to do it, because it's in a whole new environment for me. So I'm really getting to learn a lot, and I think it's really great. But one of the actions that I'm taking is just getting to know the people, getting to be as involved as possible. I think right away, they look to you like, okay, how are you going to react? What are you going to do? And so going up to individuals and asking them questions and saying, I'm not the expert, and like going to them for information, I think really helped. So
respect them and earn their respect.
Exactly. Right.
Hi, you actually talked about like switching domains, means you go from one domain to other, like you are doing so much different projects. So when we switch from one project to another, do you have some type of formal training which is given by Rockwell Collins, or it's just peer learning which takes place?
My experience was very dependent on the program itself. We have core training that everyone at Rockwell Collins does, everyone in government systems does. But for each program, some have wiki pages on the internal wiki that has a lot of information on where you need to go to find things, who your primary contacts need to be. Other programs have books of knowledge of how do you run this test and how do you run that test. So it's a lot of being on yourself to figure out where that information is and study it, and can have that connection in the program too, of who do I need to go to ask questions for, who do I need to go to that can answer these, and that knowledge sharing is in that way as well.
And I'm going to take a very different stint on that answer, or on that question as well. So the one thing I didn't point out when I was speaking was that they've made all of those changes without having to go back and go back to school and get a different degree. But if you think that going back to school and getting formal education to support some of those job changes, Rockwell will pay for you to go back to school. take advantage of it if that's something you're interested in. I don't know for any of you that are working on your MBA, is it paid for by Rockwell? My PhD is being paid for by Rockwell. So.
Thank you.
Hi, I'd love to hear more about your transition from college to working in industry, like were the projects you were assigned to something that you were familiar with, and if not, how did you become more valuable to your team?
Well, I did this a year and a half ago, so I'll take this one. I think the biggest transition for me is understanding kind of the timeline of things. People don't really talk as much as in this is due Friday, this is due next week. It's very much hours based and how long you're spending on it. So the hardest thing for me to wrap my head around is I can work all weekend and I can get it done by Monday when it's due, but it's going to get done, but now we're over budget. Now we have people that are upset with us, and the lead didn't plan for it, so now he's upset with me. So that sort of transition was difficult, and being able to quickly say, I can't get it done in that amount of time, and establishing that early to be able to really understand that we're going to need more time and more lengths of time to get it done. As far as technical skills go, I'm not doing much that I learned whenever I was in school technically. Everything was learned on the job. I do a lot of Python, a lot of understanding requirements. The skills that I do use would be more of the airplane side of things. So I was an aerospace engineer and I work on display units for helicopters. So understanding and trying to put myself in that pilot seat from an engineering point of view is sort of the biggest advantage that I have with when coming in was, I can understand the forces that are going on the plane, but how does that help the pilot? So the transition of moving into that customer mindset can be another challenge, and it kind of sounds a little bit like a broken record, but the easiest way to do it is having good mentors and knowing who you can go to and not being afraid to ask questions. I'd rather have somebody come to me with a question after working on it for a few hours than to spend 3-4 days and not make any real progress. That's kind of been what I've tried to do over the last year and a half, is be quick to ask questions and not dive in too deep, and be honest about how long it'll take me to get something done.
I'm going to chime in on the last part of your question. You said, how can I be most effective to my team? One of the things that I found myself doing, and not only when you start in a new job, but throughout your career, is try and find the pain points. What help do others need? What about your manager? What does your manager really need somebody to step up and do? There's always going to be something. So if you can figure out what that is, whether just asking directly or kind of sitting back and observing, hey, they really are struggling under the weight of this task. Maybe there's something that I can do to help, find a way to do that. And that's how you can become an extremely valuable asset and known as somebody that can step up and take on the hard tasks that maybe not everybody is willing or able to do.
Well, and one thing that nobody ever, really told me, and definitely not something you learn in school, you'll pull an all-nighter to get a paper done by the deadline, right? Maybe you miss Thirsty Thursday to get that paper done or something, but
tough choice.
Working over realizing when you go into industry and the other things that may be happening in your life or a few years down the road, like meeting the man of your dreams and starting a family and all of that, is when you work over the weekend to get something done, what else sacrifices? You have to make the conscious effort to balance things, because when you're happy at home, it's going to be easier to be happy and effective at work. When you're unhappy at home, it's really easy to say leave it at the door. When you come into work, you can't. You can't leave it at the door. It's always going to be there in the back of your mind. So make sure you're balancing.
And I always wish someone had told me that it's really the first year, or even still actually now, it's like a roller coaster. You start out and you're like, okay, holy cow, everybody's so smart, I don't know anything. Till all of a sudden you're like, okay, things are chugging along, I feel like I'm starting to know what I'm doing. And then all of a sudden there's a whole new area that you weren't really exposed to before, and your mind's blown again, and you're like, oh my gosh, now I don't know anything. So for me, and I'm still experiencing it too, but I think that was kind of one of my shocks when I came in. I kept doing this up and down where I thought that I maybe knew something, and then I had a new door or new realization. So that's kind of one thing that I try to tell a lot of people is that's okay, that's expected, and we all realize that that happens. So.
And it never stops. I mean, even for me right now, going from an engineer, individual contributor, being a manager, I made the transition well in the first few months. I'm like, yeah, you know, I could do this. My team loved me. They were talking well about me to my boss. I'm like, yeah, this is no problem. But right now is the end of our fiscal year, and we have the wonderful task of rating all of our employees. And it's one of the most difficult things I've ever had to do in my life because I'm a perfectionist and I love people. So me having to be critical about my employees, although it's important to my job, it's very difficult for me. So I have to have all the data, and I have to have, you know, all the write-ups from peers and things like that to make those right decisions. So you always have to make an adjustment, especially when you take a new role. So it's a continuous thing. And even my mentor, who's a vice president in the company, says he goes through it today too. You know, he's faced with new challenges that he's never faced before, and he honestly doesn't have the answers. He has to go figure them out, and he does a fantastic job. And you will too. You all will. Just make sure you remember those things that we've been talking about, doing the mentorships and trying to work above where you are. That's something that managers will always tell you is success, to the earlier question, success normally isn't defined by you achieving your goals, it's exceeding them. You should always be working to that next level. That way when you do make that jump, it's not such a big adjustment. So even from your senior year, start thinking about, you know, how you'll carry yourself at work, what you'll be required to do. Keep those things in mind, and then it'll be a lot easier when you make that jump.
I think one thing I would say is ask as many questions as you can when you enter the door. Because sometimes you feel like all these guys are so smart, like you guys said, but you can ask them questions. And engineers are notorious for using jargons at work. They'll throw all these jargons out in meetings, and you'll be sitting in a meeting thinking, I have no clue what these guys are talking about. It's okay to ask. And the funniest part, sometimes they don't know the full form of that jargon. They've used it so many times, they know what it kind of what it means. They have an idea of it, but they just keep using the same terms again and again. So ask as many questions as you can coming in. And it's okay. I mean, all of those engineers who are senior engineers or managers today, they all started as a regular engineer. So they understand it and they will appreciate it. And that clearly will show that you're interested and engaged in your job. So I would definitely say ask as many questions as you can when you come in.
How many of you have started, can I ask a stupid question? Any of you ever started asking? Yeah, okay. No question is a stupid question. Trust me. Don't hesitate to ask questions.
And I think when you come in, you have this great advantage of being labeled as new hire, which you may not think is a good thing, but you have a good excuse to ask those stupid questions because you have no idea what any of this stuff means. And like, oh yeah, you know, he's a new hire, so he's not going to know that. And then it helps understand and helps the more senior engineers work better with people coming in that are fresh.
All right, this will probably be the last question.
All right. So my name's Isaiah. I'm a freshman in electrical engineering. I wanted to know if you guys are actively looking for freshmen, if you consider them differently, or how that's going to look at the career fair.
So we have hired freshman co-ops before. It's not out of the question. So if you think, should I even show up or not? You should definitely show up. There are qualifiers that we look for on resumes, but honestly, going into the career fair as a freshman, you have to be able to talk yourself into the position. Show me what your aptitude is, because a lot of time I'm going to evaluate your aptitude over your abilities. I full well know that if you're coming in May or June next year, you've got a whole year to learn several different skill sets, and I might be curious about what classes you're going to take. Or maybe you've got some experience from high school in coding, what have you. Double E, maybe you took apart the microwave with a screwdriver and a hammer when you were in elementary and you're fascinated. You know, stuff like that. Show me your passion for what you're doing, for electrical engineering. tell me how you're going to solve all the world's problems, what product you think is really, really cool at our company or whatever company that you want to talk to. And the more you show that you know something about the company and show this initiative, this fire that you have, this lightning in a bottle attitude, I think that's the best thing that you can do for yourself, because we know you're not going to be able to talk to, hey, what's your single or what are the 2 electrical engineering classes that you're getting to take this year? So don't count yourself out.
I think from the recruiting aspect, you'd be really surprised. We go through a lot of interviews and things, but you'd be surprised how oftentimes a face or a person sticks with you. So we'll come back the next year, and we actually do remember people, which is, I think, kind of crazy. But the other part, to answer your question bluntly, yes, we do hire freshmen. We have what we call our pipeline. So we like to start as early as we can in some individuals. And actually, when they go through our process, we'd like to see you on site with us maybe once or twice or 3 times. We have students from Iowa State that are 3-4 times, I think, been on campus with us. And mainly because that gets you started early, you get to have some of your engineering experience, learn quite a few things, and then also you get to find your placement in the company too. It's really beneficial to us if you can start as a brand new hire and you're already in lockstep where you want to be at in the company too. So that's another benefit to it.
Well, and talking about that pipeline, we actually look to convert co-ops and interns pretty quickly. We had one in our area this summer, an intern who he's not graduating for 1.5 years, and we already offered him a job for when he finishes school. So.
Yeah, the internships are really powerful. I mentor a lot of students at Iowa State and try to keep those connections going and help as much as I can. I've been doing that ever since I was an engineer. So even if you don't get an internship and you just make a contact with somebody at Rockwell, you'd be surprised where that could go as well. So even if it's not your freshman year, you meet somebody maybe at the career fair or at an event like this, get their contact information, send them a courteous email every now and then, and just kind of keep those ties going, and they'll remember you. So that's something else that you can do too, even in your freshman year.
And I think from my own experiences, don't be deterred if you don't get the offer that you were hoping for. I applied for an internship my junior year at Rockwell, and I didn't get it, but I went back to them senior year and talked to them at the career fair full-time offer, and it worked out really well for me, and it benefited my career of maybe not having that internship at Rockwell, because the internship that I had on, I worked on requirements and requirement traceability, and it's very obvious in what I do now that experience has helped me be successful in just the time I've been here.
Well, that concludes our event today. We have pizza getting cold by the second, but before you go, I did want to thank you all for excusing my delivery. I'm just kidding. Just joking. No, I do want to thank you all for being here tonight. This is, like Gavin and I were just saying, it felt like just like yesterday I was talking on the phone with Matt and called Matt and I'm like, I got this crazy idea. What if we do like a TED Talk that's like Rockwell Collins and invite some students? And so it's very surreal being here and seeing you guys all here today. So I want to thank you again for coming out, and just a show of hands or a round of applause. Would you guys like to see companies like Rockwell continue to do these types of events? I think we definitely will. So.
I was going to say, we'll be eating the cold pizza with you, so please don't hesitate to come up
Yep.
and keep asking us questions directly. So.
I love talking. I can't shut up. So you can come meet us in the atrium. Thank you all very much.